The Dwarves of the Atlas Mountains, dwarf tribes in 19th century Morocco. There is an 1891 book titled The Dwarfs of Mount Atlas by R.G. Halliburton. It tells of a race of dwarves in the Atlas Mountains of southern Morocco, alive and well in the late 1800s. The mysterious semi-subterranean gold mining race had already gone extinct in other parts of the world by this time, but in Morocco there were still tribes in the hundreds, sometimes thousands, freely moving around. The book illustrates the author's travels, interviews with more than 60 direct witnesses and his own encounters with the little folk. They are described as intelligent and athletic, working as smiths, tinkers, well-sinkers, makers of leather, acrobats, fortune-tellers, diviners, astrologists, jugglers, workers in silver and brass, dressmakers, and cave miners. Tinker is an old word for tinsmith or a person who fixes small items. In our culture, it's also a slang word for a mischievous and impish child. They dug and built small dwellings directly into mountains inside which they lived and worked. Some lived outside of or near mountains, but their prime enclaves were subterranean. In the 1800s, Morocco was ruled by the Moors/Mari, the Muslim people of North Africa. Dwarves travelled to the towns of the Moors in caravans to attend their fairs and markets. They sold crafts, spindles, spinning wheels, and performed acrobatic shows. At around the same period of time, dwarves were used worldwide in circus shows. This is possibly owed to the fact that they were known to be very agile and not prone to injury, apart from being a rare, nearly extinct people. The dwarves were also said to hide and guard ancient treasures buried below ruins. Their main foods were milk and camel's meat. When they travelled, they carried goatskin pouches of ground camel meat with them. The meat is pounded and salted, and a small handful sustained one person for 2 days. From the Atlas Mountains and Sou region of Morocco, they travelled to Marrakesh, Fez, and the adjoining Sahara Desert for their trade. When festivities were organised by the government, they deployed groups of dwarves for performances. Because they were already reclusive in the late 1880s, their presence was rare in northern Morocco, and so they were employed as novelty entertainment. Multiple witnesses of the time say that they were skilled at hunting ostriches. They sold ostrich eggs and feathers to Arab and Berber traders of the Sahara and markets in Moroccan towns. The adults were said to be 4 feet, 121 centimetres, tall at most, but muscular. They had a reddish skin that differed greatly from the Berbers, Moors, whites, and black Africans sharing the region with them. Their skin was compared to the red Indians of the Americas. Their colour also called slightly roasted coffee and mahogany. Some of them were said to be brown or yellowish, and their faces were broad, often without eyebrows. They had short, woolly hair, and their faces were usually shaved. Strangely enough, some of their tribes were dressed like the French. They wore woolen shirts embroidered at the front and back neck. They had leather boots or leggings coming up nearly to the knees, and their knives and daggers had a peculiar crescent-shaped handle. Today, any trace of them has disappeared, and the Atlas Mountains and deserts are mostly populated by the Berber people. What happened? Did they retreat back into their subterranean realm? Was there a quiet genocide? I've previously shown how the giants of ancient legend were still here more recently than generally believed. The same thing applies to dwarves. They were with us as recent as the late 1800s. That's only 140 years ago. Because of that, you'd think more information on them is available, but knowledge of them has all but disappeared. Names of the dwarf tribes. According to the 1891 book, all people agreed that they were the dwarves are the most ancient among all the cultures and tribes, pre-flood, pre-cataclysm, pre-reset. The names given to them vary from town to town. I extracted all names given to them from the book. They are given by Moors, blacks, Arabs, Berbers, and some by the dwarves themselves. The author doesn't bother to analyse most of the names, but I'm doing it because linguistics always prove revealing. Little Haratine, men. Little Hartaniat, women. Little Hartani. This appears to link the dwarves to the ethnic group of the Haratin. In Mauritania, these are a distinct ethnic group. In Morocco, they are also distinct, but lumped in with Berbers. To me, this seems like an inaccurate name for the dwarves. They may have mixed with the Hartani, but they are ethnically distinct from them in many ways. But it does remind me of an Arabic word called Harathin, which means diggers. Haida, Haydn, Heathen. Haydn is the ancient and modern German for pagans. Some sources say that in the old days the entire region of North Africa was called Heathen. In Arabic, the word Haid refers to coming out of a mountain. In ancient days long gone, paganism was often associated with coming out of mountains because their rites were often performed inside caves. Hazora. This name for the dwarves is interesting. In the Bible, it refers to an enclosure, a fortification, or the stronghold of Canaanites in the mountains. The Canaanites were said to be idol worshippers that practiced taboo sex acts, child sacrifice to their gods, etc. They worshipped Baal. Moses' successor Joshua led a war against the Canaanites. This will become relevant further down. Patiki, Pata, Pati. The book says this likely means father, Pata, Pati, and it's plural Patiki. I agree. Baraka, or Sidi Baraka. The word means blessing and tribe of blessings and divine blessings across various languages, including Arabic and Hindu. The dwarves have often been called the Blessed Tribe or Sons of the Blessed, Ulad Mebrok. The word Ulad means people or tribe and also town. The word Mebrok, I believe, is actually the Arabic word Mabruk, which again means blessed, Igwilmim. This name could be a reference to what in Berber language is called Aguelmim, a city in southern Morocco today called Guelmim. Tuwata. I was unable to decipher this one at the time of this writing. Ayusa. I was unable to decipher this one at the time of this writing. Idle. I was unable to decipher this one at the time of this writing. Adusal. I was unable to decipher this one at the time of this writing. Akas, Wakas, Eitwaka. Aka is ancient German for land and Waka is ancient German for vehicle and was a common word in pre-flood times used for tribes, ships, boats and aircraft. Tata. This probably again refers to forefathers. Tajikant. Wikipedia says that this is a mostly extinct tribe of Berbers who spoke Arabic. It's probably an inaccurate label for the dwarves. Ruha. I was unable to decipher this one at the time of this writing. Agleman. I was unable to decipher this one at the time of this writing. Nizigan. Likely named after the old Moroccan town Nezig. Jedi. This means father of our fathers. Yes, the movie Star Wars references a famous dwarf who is also a Jedi. Ait Ata. The word Ait is a Berber term meaning people of or descendant of. Ata could refer to father or to Atlantis. It also means gift in Arabic and Persian. People of the gift is likely considering they were considered blessed. Imini. This is said to mean short people and it appears to derive from the Latin word mini. It could also be related to the river of the same name, Ulad Sidi Hamidou Musa or Sedi Hamed ben Musa. This is what some dwarf tribes called themselves. It means tribe of Lord Hamed, son of Moses. Why would they call themselves descendants of Moses' son? In the Torah, God doesn't choose Moses' sons for the priestly class, but rather his brother Aaron's sons. An uncharacteristic move. What's wrong with Moses' sons? Wasn't Moses one of God's favorites? The ancient scripture doesn't explain. Both of Moses' sons are said to have been born to wives from Midian, Arabia, rather than a Jewish wife. Was this the reason? The names of Moses' sons in the Torah are Gershom, his firstborn, and Eleazar. Eleazar means helper. Gershom means sojourner and stranger. Are these sojourners and strangers the dwarves? Amazingly, Akka, the place where most of the dwarves lived, seems to be the first place in Morocco that Jews migrated to. Why Akka? What were they looking for? the lost descendants of Moses, towns and mountain dwellings of the dwarf tribes. Luckily, the book tells us the exact locations of their dwellings. Akka, also called Vaka in ancient times, is the most named place, and anyone can find it on Google Maps. I've put a red pin there. Isn't it great to know exactly where the last of this mysterious race lived? This way, any adventurer can go there and will surely find traces of these people. The book is explicit of where they have dwellings, tribes, and towns. If you're a researcher of anomalous phenomena, you really appreciate books that are specific, which is a sign of honesty. These are all the place names from the book. The ones I found on Google Maps are bolded. Akka, Akairi, Akka Igan, Gil, Itonaili, Tamsrat, Tadakust, Mountains of Kaliz, Tazawalt in Sus, Torert. Ahaha, Shedma, Dra Valley, Tamanat, headquarters, ruins. Ait Tinker, Ait Suk, Ait Wabili, Ait Sheltar, Garnata, near Tinzoni, more than 1,000 dwarves. Valley of Imini, southeast of Dra, Asa, Atum Ribet, Taska Yekin Ishet, Bani Yusi, River Dora, Didu, Atuaili, east of Demnat, Ait Mesad, Ophiran, Ait Mesal, Ait Bensid, Ait Atta country, Beniz Nasan country, Tafilet or Tafilelt. Tarudant in the Sus Valley, Iguilmim in the Sahel. Bani Mountains southeast of Wad Dra. Inside Mountains southeast of Wad Dra. Near Sakiat Hamra, Tubold, Ulad Kador, Ulad Habub, Mol Okaz. Based on the towns I found, I was able to draw this directions map on Google Maps. It gives us a good indication of where these people lived and where they didn't. One town I did not include in this is Taurert, because it's way off to the north, an anomaly among an otherwise consistent picture. Other places I was unable to include were Wad Dra and the mountains southeast of Wad Dra, because they appear to be inaccessible by car. It would have been a good place for them to seclude themselves. The area is across country lines in Algeria. Wad Dra, spelled here, Oued Dra, and the mountains southeast of the Dra Valley are the most frequently mentioned, but they appear also to be the most difficult to access. Mountains adjacent to a desert is a common theme with dwarves. The same thing is mirrored in many other places around the world. In my books, I've asserted that they fled disaster into subterranean dwellings. Another theory I put forward, based on mythology, is that banishment into the underground was their punishment post-flood. In many places, the resulting disasters left vast stretches of barren desert. If there were mountains nearby, that's where survivors fled, buried cities and ancient treasures. As the dwarves themselves admitted, they were keenly interested in ancient treasures below the sand. In a previous article, I showed how the Sahara Desert was once a thriving, green and populated place that had been destroyed by some type of advanced weaponry. I expressed the view that buried cities would be found there someday, as have already been. The dwarves knew what had happened. The Arabs, Berbers and Europeans did not seem to remember, but the dwarves knew. Is this the reason they were eradicated? Is that why we found them living near the edge of the Sahara? Are they possibly among the last survivors of a world-changing war that also targeted the giants? Treasures of lost civilizations are rumored to be in the Dra Valley and along the 1,100-kilometer-long Dra River. There was an ancient city called Tapunt. It still exists in a modern version today called Tabunte. The ruins of Tapunt are said to be 3 miles distant from the modern city, or as it was in the 1800s. The Arabs of the 1800s referred to the old Tabunt as an ancient city of idolaters. The town was also called Anibna Didu, translated as Town of Daidu. There one can find many figures of people with the heads of horses, bulls, dogs, monkeys, wolves, etc., not entirely unlike the human-animal crosses of ancient Egypt. These figures are 18 inches to 2 feet high, 45 centimeters to 70 centimeters. The people call them Ait Beni, Beni Kerbu and Makerbu, as well as Ait Beni Hazor. At Tapunt there is a ruin called Abniat Didu, Temple of Didu. There, dwarves were seen taking a statue of Isiri Didu down and lifting him back up with a rope as a matter of ritual. An old saying in the region regarding prosperity is, "You have all the gold of Punt." Naturally, if the dwarves were idol worshippers, it makes sense that they keep secluded from the religious, and it could very well be the reason they disappeared. Looking at Tabunte on Google Earth, I see some possible evidence of a new city being built atop a more ancient one. I've gone into this phenomenon in my article, Ancient Grid Lines of the Desert. I may be wrong, but these areas in and around Tabunte look potentially anomalous. These look like property lots, lines and streets have been prepared but not built on yet. It's how new developments start. Except they look weathered, obviously made long ago. In this part of town, the streets are all ready, according to Google, but the rest looks like it's been destroyed. Here's something mind-blowing. The dwarves were often specifically referred to as the acrobats, and also as people who built dwellings from clay. The ceilings of some of their dwellings inside mountains are no more than 5.2 foot high, according to the book. In America, there are some people who say that certain cave dwellings were not built by the Native Americans, but rather an even older people, the dwarves. These dwellings in the desert mountains are called adobe, clay. That gives a whole new meaning to adobe acrobat, doesn't it? The dwarves of Morocco called their ancestors the Romi. That's noteworthy, considering that many of the buried ruins indeed look Roman. There are also possible crossovers to the gypsies of Europe that call themselves Roma and share some customs with these dwarves. One place of subterranean treasures, according to the book, was Amsmiz, a small town at the northern foot of the Atlas Mountains, specifically a place in the mountains above Amsmiz called Imintela. Today it's called Amizmiz. I found the place named Imintala, which is ancient German for in the valley, on Google Maps, and a few very interesting photos of what look like entrances to mountain dwellings. These are photos shot by a private person and uploaded to Google. I found no other photos of the area online. There are frequent references to ancient ruins and buried cities southeast of Dra River. That would be an area that is, unfortunately, a UN-monitored political buffer zone in Western Sahara. It is said of this area that it contains many prehistoric sites of archaeological interest, but the terrain is quite difficult to access. Generally, the entire Bani mountain range, Anti-Atlas, was said to belong to the dwarves, whereas the Atlas mountain range also had dwarf tribes, but less so. The beliefs of the dwarves, accounts on their religion differ. They were known as Muslims, Christians, and idol-worshipping pagans. Some were said to be half-Christians, mixing their magic spells and idols with reading and following the Gospels. It is possible that their Muslim and Christian allegiances were fronts for the public, but some appeared to be genuine. The idol of their worship was called Didu, another name for Osiris, one of the oldest Egyptian gods. Many towns south of the Atlas Mountains use the word in their town and river names. There's the district of Did, or Didan, the towns Ait Didi, Didi, Ait Hedidu, and Ait Dudun. There is a river named Did and another named Didu, or Dora, in the Black Mountains near Tinzone. In the Atlas Mountains, Dido Osiris is called Dido Isiri. Strangely enough, a mountain rumoured to harbour dwarves is called Mountain of the Christians, or Jebel el Nasara. Christians were called Nasara, the Nazarenes. Near the bottom of that mountain is a town called Taskadir, and near Taskadir is another mountain called Ben Tohad. This is where purely Christian dwarves called Imani, possibly named after the river Imani, were said to live. I found none of these places on maps, but knowing that Nasara was close to Akka, I found the town Taskala perched between two mountains. Many people experience the dwarves as secretive, secluded, not revealing all they know. They were also known to be frightened and distrustful of white Europeans. They would not go to hotel rooms with them would often not allow to be touched by them, would not show up to arranged meetings, etc. Some reports differentiated between the Zenagar tribes and other dwarves. The Zenagar were viewed less favorably than others. The word seems to derive from the Arabic and Hebrew word for copper rust or scum, Ezekiel 24:11. The dwarves were copper miners, so that could make sense. The Zenagar were said to ritualistically sacrifice sheep. The dwarves fear the evil eye, a belief that is still common today in North African countries. They were known as money finders and would sometimes find money for other people, as a service. To do so, they wrote on a wooden slate. The book says nothing further on this, but I assume it's a kind of divination practice, as the dwarves worldwide were very much into divination. Many reported that the dwarves, when travelling in the desert, wore a haik, or kanif, or burnous, with a large yellow eye or all-seeing eye on it. The eye was normally around 1 yard in length. A burnous is a cape worn by desert people. See image below. In Muslim culture, the single eye has a negative connotation, perhaps another reason the dwarves were secluded. One of their techniques of keeping secrets was to mix up words in their language, putting the end of words first so nobody can understand them. The dwarves themselves warned people not to talk about them, almost as if they didn't want to be found or as if they knew they were being hunted. On the other hand, the Moors were also very fond of or superstitious about the specialness or sacredness of the dwarves, calling them blessed and considering their presence good luck. Was this good self-marketing from the dwarves, or is there more to it? I don't know, but it was considered bad luck to talk about them. A taboo was placed on it by Moors and Berbers alike. The dwarves of Morocco had a reputation for knowing the stars well. I assume this relates to astrology, but it could also relate to something of their religion. They were said to make little books, which are carried around as charms or placed in water. These books were said to be able to cure ills. More is not said in the book, but it's a common ancient belief among indigenous people that water can carry information, because it actually can. Their old language is called Tagnawat or Mizgitin. Also Heda, Haida and Tinka. I'm sure if I dwell on it for a few hours, I'd figure out what these words mean. Their demise could have also been self-imposed. They were known to fight each other, tribe to tribe, using poison arrows and firearms. We don't know. To me, it's amazing that an entire ethnicity can just disappear, and people aren't just a little more curious about it. The book says that skeletons of the little people from Morocco were sent to the Royal Society. If that is so, the Royal Society has failed to inform the public. I learned in school in the early 1980s that dwarf races were a thing of fairy tales. They were mythic. But not so. Their race was flesh and blood real, and we've found their dwellings with tiny doors, their small skeletons, and much more. It would be interesting to find out how they came to exist, where they disappeared to, why they were so frightened, and where the cities are buried.